10 Scary Reddit Stories. Story 1. Blackwood. In the small town of Blackwood, nestled deep within the heartland of America, an unsettling legend prevailed among the locals. The tale spoke of an abandoned house, situated on the outskirts of town, a house with a dark and twisted history. The haunting began in the 1950s, when the DeWitt family moved into the aging Victorian home. The DeWitts were an ordinary family, known for their kindness and community involvement. But as time went on, strange occurrences plagued their lives within those walls. Objects moved on their own, disembodied whispers echoed through the hallways, and an oppressive sense of dread hung in the air. Whispers of a malevolent presence spread like wildfire throughout the town, and many believed that the house itself was cursed. Despite their mounting fear, the DeWitts refused to leave, determined to uncover the truth behind the haunting. One fateful night, the eldest daughter, Emily, ventured into the attic, a place rumored to hold the key to the house's dark secret. As she climbed the creaky stairs, the air grew thick with an otherworldly presence. The attic door swung open with a chilling creak, revealing a space shrouded in darkness. Emily's flashlight illuminated the room, revealing a collection of old photographs scattered across the dusty floor. As she sifted through them, a series of disturbing images caught her attention. Each photograph depicted a different family, seemingly frozen in fear, their eyes wide with terror. As Emily's trembling hand reached the bottom of the stack, she found a picture of her own family, distorted and contorted in an agonizing state. A primal scream tore through her throat, echoing through the attic as she stumbled backward, the photograph scattering around her. From that moment on, the house's malevolent presence intensified. Doors slammed shut, lights flickered ominously, and the whispers grew louder, taunting the family day and night. The DeWitts became prisoners in their own home, trapped within the clutches of a supernatural force. In a final desperate act, the family sought the help of a renowned paranormal investigator, Professor Samuel Bennett. Armed with an arsenal of specialized equipment, Bennett arrived at the house, determined to unravel the truth behind the hauntings. As night fell, the investigator and the DeWitts huddled together in the dimly lit living room. The temperature plummeted, and an icy breath brushed against their skin. Professor Bennett commanded the spirits to reveal themselves, daring them to show their true nature. Suddenly, the house erupted into chaos. Furniture flew through the air, shattering against the walls. The walls groaned and shifted, as if alive. The malevolent presence materialized before them, a grotesque figure with hollow eyes and a twisted smile, emanating pure evil. The investigator fought against the darkness, reciting incantations and performing rituals, while the DeWitts clung to each other in terror. The battle between the forces of light and darkness waged on, each side refusing to yield. In a climactic moment, a blinding flash of light consumed the room. The evil presence let out an ear-piercing shriek before dissipating into the ether. The haunting had finally been vanquished. Exhausted and relieved, the DeWitts emerged from the ordeal, their lives forever changed by the horrors they had witnessed. The town, once plagued by the curse of the house, now breathed a sigh of relief as the darkness that had loomed for decades was lifted. To this day, the house stands as a chilling reminder of the evil that once resided within its walls. The legend of the DeWitt family's ordeal lives on, a tale whispered among locals as a chilling reminder of the thin veil that separates our world. Story 2. It came at night. Me grandma, who is now passed, was the most amazing woman I have ever known. I know this gets said often. We all believe our grandparents to be amazing. My grandma was the most loving, kind-hearted, open-minded, religious and upright woman. She raised 3 children and was the wife of a WWI vet who had lost both his legs, so she was also his caregiver. She had his hospital bed set up in the living room, next to the big picture windows, so he could see outside and look at their 30 acres of property. She slept in the bedroom right next to him, so she could hear him, and if he needed anything, he would ring his little bell. Her mother passed away, and soon after she started to receive visits from her at night. She decided to tell my dad about this, who is also a man of faith. He asked her, "What happens when she visits?" She replied, "Well, we just talk." He asked, "What about?" And she said, "About anything and everything. We just talk," he said. "Well, next time she visits, ask her in Jesus' name who are you?" And she agreed. Not too long later, my grandma was laying in her bed, and her mother came in her room to visit. She was standing at the end of the bed, and they had their talk. And when they were finished for the night, my grandma said, "Oh, by the way, I am supposed to ask you, in Jesus' name, who are you?" Then, what she thought was her mother transformed into something else and said devil and disappeared. If she were still alive, I know she would have wanted me to share this experience with others, so this is for her. Story 3. The Shelter. About 3 years ago I moved from a one hellhole into another. For context though, the next flat I moved into was actually in a good area. And it looked better than the last two places I'd lived in. For the first 2 months everything was calm. I could come home after work and sleep without any problem. Until my neighbor's dog would start barking, and I mean at least 7 hours a day. This dog would be off on one. Then it started, people would come to his flat and bang like hell on his door. Now partly I felt the need to be a responsible neighbor and call the police in order to keep him safe. I mean, this was an old man. I was wrong. About a month of crap and me calling the police ended up in this old man breaking into my place. At first I didn't really notice due to drinking a little too much. But things like underwear and other stuff went missing. I didn't really put two and two together until I had a sober month. That's when I put up a camera. It wasn't until a few more months later I started to realize this camera wouldn't pick up dark shiny clothing until one day after an evening shift I came home and sat in my chair in pure darkness. I could hear something shuffling near the front door. My flat had one door, the front door, and only windows at the front. One big window and a small window. Welcome to basement flats in the UK, I guess. As I sat and listened, trying to work out if it was just my mind playing tricks, I mustered up the courage and banged on the wall of the hallway so I could see who was moving around or doing whatever. The dog, a white Akita, ran off first, and the person, I still don't know what the hell he was doing, but I have my theories. I confronted him the next day whilst angry and sober, to no avail. He tried lying and saying he wasn't home. I let it go up until I came home one day and there was a strange smell in my flat, and I noticed the window in the bottom left corner had been jarred open. I have a few theories as to what he was up to, but it wasn't something I was interested in. It wasn't until I put a camera clock in my room I got the evidence I needed. I saw him creeping through my room and sniffing and masturbating in my room. It made me feel sick, but unfortunately there was no way to identify him due to him wearing a mask. I knew it was him. From past interactions I just knew it was him. One night I lost my temper and threatened him with a blank firing pistol, legal in the UK. That night is the night I ended up in prison. Now, as scared as I was, it wasn't overly bad being locked away for 22 hours a day. It gives you time to think, which will either send you crazy or change you. It changed me, I hope for the better. When I was finally released they told me I had nowhere to go, nowhere to live, even though my license conditions stated I needed a stable address to go to. For around a month I kept to myself, hidden in the shadows of the city, in the loneliest of places, no friends, no family to help. I considered suicide. Attacking people, I considered a lot of things until I broke and I reached out to the Salvation Army. I was tired of being wet, cold, and I knew I smelled like shit, especially after the McDonald's staff kicked me out. They told me they had no spaces and put me in contact with the shelter, a group who provides winter accommodation temporarily. I agreed desperately. They picked a group of us up around 1600 and moved us into a building. After about a 45-minute drive I was disorientated due to the long drive. Everything was okay, to be honest. A shower, a cooker. Yeah, you had to clean, and yeah, you had to cook for yourself. I had no problem with that. I've lived on my own for multiple years. I had no issue with that. It was around a month later I'd finally been offered a job with a recruitment agency. I was over the moon, and I just went with that. The caretaker of the building began to take interest in me for some reason. At first, I just shrugged it off as him just making sure everything was okay, until one day, he knocked on my door and offered me food. I took it happily without thinking anything. When you're homeless and someone offers you food, you kinda take it without question. It wasn't until around 2 weeks later I started to question everything. I started having these weirdos shakes and I felt like I was going through withdrawal of some sorts. But I don't drink that much and I don't do drugs. I started researching the shakes, and what I found out was that if you eat human flesh you can experience similar effects. I decided to investigate further before pointing the finger. One night I ended up staying up because I just could sleep, so I snuck downstairs to the kitchen only to peer through the door and see the cook Vasily cutting up a body. I cupped my hand over my mouth to stifle my gasp and quickly moved back to my room. I moved out of there last week, and the stories I've heard all lead to the same conclusion. They are feeding the homeless to the homeless. This is the first time I've shared this part of my story. Due to being scared they may be watching, somebody help me. Story 4. Lurky live in an apartment with my wife and son. My son is 7 and he claims the stairs are hollow, and I don't believe him. He once told me the TV grew a body and took the cat. Although the cat went missing, me, a grown man, believed that after he kept say the stairs were hollow. I went go see the went just a bit creaky. Until you was doing laundry, the whole apartment used one washing machine and dryer. And they constantly break, so, and there's maintenance room next to the laundry room. Till I was fed up and went to go fix it myself. And went in the maintenance room. It led to a staircase. I went down, it was sure dark. I opened my phone for flashlight and there was many pipes. And one was leaking. I brought some supplies with me and had flex tape and used it. Looked good as new. Then in corner of my saw a man handing. I walked towards it, as turned up the flashlight brightness and saw many maintenance workers hanging. And I saw a dark shadow quickly crawling towards me. It got on top of me. It bit a piece of my shoulder off. It was a hairy thing with claws and sharp teeth. I saw priests surrounding me as I passed out, getting ripped apart. Story 5. One of the most terrible and scary stories in my life. When I was 4 years old, I was with my mother and aunts in determination on a farm, and I was playing with the children. But at 5 p.m. everyone was inside, and I went out alone to play in the garden games and entered the tube slide, and it was a little dark. And when I entered it, it was not slippery and it was dry. And at that moment the most terrifying thing I saw happened. I saw a girl inside, and she was sitting and looking at me, and there was no girl with us, and she had dark circles and her shape. Until now I remember him, and then I slowly went upstairs and ran away and went to tell anyone, and no one believed me, and I brought a child who was playing with us. And I said, what do you think, you should try to enter the tube slide. And when he entered it and skated and came out, he did not face any problems. And I was surprised by the matter, and the child went away. And I entered the tube slide again to make sure. And I saw the girl again. And I was about to pass out. And she went out and went. And I do not remember what happened after that. Story 6. What the hell? I don't know who to tell. I'm still a kid and I'm experiencing this. First, I'm not that young but still young. I was laying on my bed watching scary TikTok. My door isn't that light, at least it can't be closed by the wind. My sister opened the window. And right after the door almost shut, built not entirely, it was the wind, I thought. But can you guess how scared I was when it closed on its own? It's not even windy today. Story 7. Choked by something. My 4-year-old daughter Anne, I decided to go visit my grandma for the weekend. And I have never had anything happen there before. This particular time, my daughter and I were sleeping in the same room. She was still little and I wanted to make sure she didn't go running off. It was late, so we laid down to go to sleep. And I woke up suddenly. At this moment I realized that I couldn't breathe. It felt like actual hands on my throat, squeezing. I tried to speak but it came out quiet, and I couldn't barely say anything. I was trying to get my daughter's attention. She was laying there asleep, but she was talking in her sleep. That's how I knew I was awake. I was trying to rationalize the situation as I laid there being choked. I grew up in a religious family, and so I thought to call out to Jesus. I could barely get the first syllable out. I kept trying and trying, coming out in whispers and bits. Each time I attempted to say it, I was able to say more of it, and a little louder than before. I finally was able to say it, and the choking stopped. I sat up and I went to the bathroom, expecting that I would 100% see handprints on my neck, as it was still sore. I looked in the mirror and there wasn't any marks. I decided I wasn't going to stay the weekend after that, and my daughter and I went home. Story 8. I won't ever watch this cartoon the same way. A couple of years ago, I had the biggest scare of my life. my wife, and my 2 sons were relaxing on the couch, watching some good old Tom and Jerry. But it didn't feel the same all my life. I have associated this cartoon as funny, a cat chasing a mouse. That is very cheeky and the cat cannot catch him. Now it was different. As we were watching this before bedtime, the light was turned off, but every time when the cat entered the screen, the light magically turned on. After a couple of seconds, it turned off like nothing had happened. And then it went fully dark. The TV started glitching out, until about a minute later was all bloody red. Then the camera turned right, showing a cat, with blood all over him, eating a mouse. He turned to the camera. It was not Tom. His eyes, they were fully black. His very, very sharp teeth could be seen miles away. He covered the camera with a sign. It said, "Mark, Andrew, you're next." We were creeped out. These were the names of my sons. After about 5 seconds, the screen went black. Then the cartoon carried on like nothing had happened, but we couldn't watch it the same way. A month went by. I was at work, almost forgotten about what had happened before. And I got a call from my wife. Mark and Andrew had been killed. And now we go back to today. It would be Andrew's 12th birthday today. And the killer still remains unknown. And I always have the feeling that I had done something wrong. Story 9. Old Things or Those Who Sleep Beneath. I was scavenging the riverbanks for anything useful, and I saw something shiny in the mud. I dug it out and wiped it clean. It was a tin can, but unlike any I had ever seen before. It was made of a strange metal that was cold and smooth to the touch. It had no opening or lid, but it was covered with strange carvings that looked like ancient symbols. I felt a strange attraction to the can. It seemed to call out to me, to whisper secrets in my ear. I tucked it in my backpack and took it home. I hid it under my bed, away from prying eyes. I became obsessed with it. I spent hours studying the carvings, trying to decipher their meaning. I tried to find a way to open the can, but nothing worked. It was sealed tight, but I knew there was something inside, something alive, something hungry. I could hear it moving, scratching, hissing. I could feel its presence in my mind, its hunger in my veins. It wanted out, and I wanted to let it out. I don't know why I wanted to do that. Maybe I was curious. Maybe I was lonely. Maybe I was angry at the world that had taken everything from me. Maybe I wanted to see what would happen if I unleashed an ancient horror upon it. I don't know how long I've had the can. Years. Maybe decades. But I know that the seal is weakening. The metal is cracking. The carvings are glowing. The creature is stirring. Soon, it will be free, and so will I. The carvings say something in a language I don't understand, but somehow I know what they mean. Old things or those who sleep beneath. Whomever sealed this creature is long gone, but I am here, and I will break it. Story 10. Clock. There was an old clock that sat on the mantel in the living room of a large, old house. The clock had been in the family for generations and was known for being temperamental. It would randomly stop ticking for days at a time, and then start up again as if nothing had happened. However, one day, the clock started to act even stranger. Late at night, the ticking of the clock changed. It became louder, with a strange, eerie tone. The hands on the clock spun around faster and faster, until they seemed to blur together, and then, without warning, the clock let out an ear-piercing screech. It was as if it was a live van screaming in terror or raging in anger. The family tried to ignore it, dismissing it as an old clock that was just acting up. However, strange things started happening around the house. The family began to hear chilling whispers at night, and objects would move without explanation. They started to feel like they were being watched by someone or something. In the corners of their eyes, one night, the father of the family woke up to the sound of the clock ticking. He went into the living room to check on the clock, and found that it had stopped ticking altogether. As he leaned in to try to fix it, the clock suddenly sprung to life. Its hands began moving rapidly, and the clock started to shake violently, as if possessed by some evil force. The man tried to back away, but he couldn't. He was frozen in terror, and then the clock let out one final screech, and its hands reached out and wrapped around the man's throat. He gasped for air as the clock suffocated him, leaving him lifeless on the ground. The family knew then that the clock wasn't just broken. It had been possessed by a malevolent spirit, They tried to get rid of the clock, but it always found its way back into their possession. They realized they were forever trapped with the killer clock, waiting for the day it would take another life. Thanks for listening, guys. Please like and subscribe.